the independence of our content with a threat to lawyers there, but I'm sure our PlaceTech partners will be very agile and spotting the need for humans and legal advice on top of this tech. Yeah, hopefully some of you have been joining in on Slido on your devices. We'll get some questions underway. Nice to see a few popping up there. Let's take, picking up on the second question down there, Tom, Bev, the design life of the battery. Good question there. Somebody saying my iPhone barely holds a charge after 2 years.
Yep, the battery life cycle is, the product is sold as having a 15-year life cycle, but obviously it depends on the charge and discharge routines that you use within the battery. Oddly, the work that we've done when I mentioned the vehicle to grid charger across the road, we did some extensive trials with Warwick University. A really interesting place. They've just got like a huge room full of car batteries that they're charging and discharging and whatnot. And if you discharge and recharge it within a certain profile, it actually prolongs the battery life. So in terms of the battery usage outside, anybody wants to see it, I can show you the battery. Its profile is only expected to drop off in about year 9, and then it's only expected to drop off by about 2 to 3% year on year. It's fairly proven technology. It's the battery cells in the power pack outside are very similar to the stuff in Tesla cars. So a little bit different. It's a lithium-ion battery in the same way as your phone, but is designed to be used in a very different way because of these discharge and recharge cycles.
I didn't quite catch that. Have we got a roving mic? Do you want to?
I think he said he dropped his phone in a pint of beer.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Thanks. Thanks for the anecdote, Tom. Nicola, do you want to pick up on the next thing about how technology applies to some of those trends that you identified?
Yeah, I think there's something that you can now install in your office which will make you find out what spaces are being used more. So you could put sensors on people's desks and things like that, and then you can find out, well, actually, Jimmy Smith doesn't come in 3 days a week, so why don't we do that with a hot desk in? And that way you can create more agile working because you're not having just banks and banks of desks. I think furniture companies as well are jumping on this as well and creating different options for you to do this. So there'll be like meeting rooms which has a TV screen built in, so you can put that instead of a meeting room. You can use acoustics within that. But this sensor system is definitely something that I think people will be using more to make sure that they're not getting a bit too big of an office, and they're not going to be wasting space, because obviously each piece of meter squared is costing you money every month. So you need to make sure that you're in the right building for you.
Some of that, incidentally, we've got here. So if anybody's interested in that sort of tech, we've got it here. The sensor tech that Nicola's talking about, with that occupancy thing, we've got a few examples of that here. We've got sensors on the desks. We've got some people counting things at the door. When you go to the bathrooms, you'll see there's a little sign in there about water tech. Again, if you see, anybody who's got a particular interest in it, we can show you some examples in this building.
Just picking up on the sort of data implications of that, obviously we've had the huge scandal with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. Do you think there's going to be a backlash from staff about how their data is collected and shared and used, or do you not think that's going to touch this sort of thing?
I think as long as you explain where you're going to be using that data, I don't see it being too much of a problem. At the end of the day, they're doing it as well for their well-being, to make them have a better environment to work. So as long as your senior leadership explains that, then I don't see it being a problem.
It's pretty anonymized data, so it sounds Big Brother-ish, but ultimately you're just looking at occupancy trends. So in a meeting room, we can't really identify who the users were in that room at any one time, but you can understand how many hours of a day is it used, look at the profile over a year, and start mapping that. The access points, those white sort of Cisco bits of kit on the ceiling. You can look at it a different way. You can create heat maps of a building and understand, in big spaces like this, when we design them, we think they're all going to be used, but where do people cluster? And actually, does the furniture support them clustering an area? Does the facilities getting used? And if not, then let's repurpose them for something else. So it's just kind of actionable insight, really, that we're trying to get, and it's not about the kind of big stick, oh, that person's not at work at 9 a.m. It's just more about space utilization.
Okay. Neil, there was a question about how click-to-purchase interacts with the land registry and HMRC SDLT, and how is the accuracy of the information hashed to the blockchain actually guaranteed? Sort of two different points
Okay,
there.
so the first thing is we can't interact with the land registry because they're not up to our position yet. The land registry isn't in a blockchain. Click-to-purchase is an execution tool where one exchanges online by auction or private treaty or tender, etc. So it's the exchange process. The lawyers, you'll be pleased to know, the lawyers still need to complete the transaction. So we're interested in the exchange. I actually happen to think the exchange is the most important part rather than completion, because there's a lot of talk. If you were to research, there's a number of companies and a number of pilot projects throughout the world who are talking about putting land registries into blockchain ledgers. But I actually think that almost misses the point. It's the actual point of the contract. It's the point of the right to ownership, which I think is key. The land registry will probably will start and at some point, no doubt, here move into a blockchain ledger. But when, I don't know. But when it does, other data will be able to feed in. The second point was accuracy of information hashed into the blockchain guaranteed. As I said, blockchain is a database. And like any database, it doesn't mean that the quality of data going into the database is good or bad. It just means that data is being put into a database, which can then not be changed. So in terms of guaranteeing what we put into the database, of course, we think our system is fantastic. So, of course, we are putting in quality data. But somebody could create a blockchain ledger and put in poor data. So there will be integrity around the businesses which are recording in a ledger. It's a bit like the land registry. Actually, if you think about it at the moment, everyone relies upon the land registry. You don't really need it in a blockchain ledger because I've never heard anybody have a complaint with the land registry. But it will go that way in the future. So just think of it as a database. That's really the simplest way.
I saw another question as well about when will this become the norm?
What, blockchain?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. But what I would say is that, as I said earlier, the speed and the level of interest is dramatic. I mean, I'm guessing that 12 months ago, many people hadn't heard of the term blockchain, and now it's everywhere. Everyone knows about it. I just think the pace of change is dramatically changing, and I think it's being used in all sorts of industries. For example, I think you'll end up with car registrations being in blockchain. So when you buy a car, for example, you'll have a data set which you can rely upon rather than doing these checks whether someone really owns a car. It's happening very, very quickly. So okay. It's certainly not many years away. It's now.
Yeah. Okay. I had a few questions myself for the panel. Tom, you've spoken before when we've met here about the approach to trialing and installing some of the things that you're doing here and then spreading out into MSP and Bruntwood. Tell us a bit about your approach to R&D, and property isn't necessarily known for innovating and research and development budgets and things. So.
Yeah, I suppose it's fair to say we've been a bit behind the curve in investing in research and development to kind of progress our industry. If you look at other industries, they're far ahead of us. And I think you look at the underlying amount of expenditure they put in. A traditional technology company will be spending anywhere between sort of 8 and 13% on R&D activity. And I can't say that at this point in time for our business, but what I can say is we started to really move the dial a bit with that. So we're looking at Circle Square, actually within the first 2 buildings there. My colleagues, they've put in £750,000 for pure R&D. Yeah, we want to try and make that, have a return on investment, but what they're saying is there's a budget, it's ring-fenced for us to look at new technology applications that will either prove the sustainability of the building, the efficiency of the building, or impact that customer journey. And I think when we start actually acting like a technology company and investing in R&D and accepting that not everything's going to have a great kind of return or impact, because things will fail. There's some stuff that we've tried in this building, we wanted to be the first commercial building to do power over Ethernet lighting. So all the lights would have been powered by essentially sort of Cat6 cabling rather than a traditional power line. That didn't work out for us, but we tried it, and it cost us some money doing it. But if it had, we think it would have given us that kind of controllable feature and the ability to kind of, essentially improve the efficiency of the building that would have been really impactful. So we're trying some stuff, and I think moving and allocating funds to do it is kind of an important first step. And as I say, Bruntwood's seeing that now as fundamental to their business model.
And how easy or otherwise is it to get that buy-in from the top level, from the board, to press the button on some of these things?
I think historically it's been quite hard, but then it's kind of a mindset thing. We're seeing a huge change. The leadership in my business has changed quite dramatically over the last few years, and we've brought in some of the younger directors. Kira's sat here somewhere, and people like that want to progress, want to drive forward our product. They don't want to rest on the kind of traditional property laurels. And I think it's a change from people that are digital natives coming through companies, and at the same time kind of that C-suite getting a better understanding of it. So it's not one thing, but it's a bit bottom up and a bit top down, and it does need executive buy-in to ultimately sign off on it.
And picking up on that in terms of some of the ideas that you're hearing across the table that people are asking for, Nicola, from the occupiers and landlords, etc., how do you advise them as to what might be a fad and might not be here in a few months' time, and what you think has actually got some sort of material value and the productivity piece?
I think there's a lot of people look at this kind of stuff. There's a lot of blogs online. So it's keeping up with what research is out there as well. But there's a lot of landlords out there that are investing in this. Sorry. Is it me? It's my microphone.
Is it bleeding?
I'm not sorry. So definitely the research is out there, and I think it is working. So I don't think there's anything at the moment that hasn't worked, that they're thinking, we've put all the space in this building and people aren't using it. People are using it. We work an hour into the one, so it's not like they've done this and no one's got memberships. It is being used, so I don't see there being any negativity when it has to go back and it's not being done.
How do you find the sort of selling into property and speaking to your peers in the property industry of this? There's a wry smile appears.
Well, yeah, I would say, well, I would, oh, hello, come on.
Yeah.
No, yes?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I've been, listen, I'm an agent. I sell buildings for a living, so I didn't go into to change the world. I did it to win business, and that took me into technology, and that took me into click-to-purchase and blockchain. And we have been trying to get other agents to use it, but there's been tremendous resistance from the agency community to prop tech, I would say, generally. But within the last year or so, I would say in the last year, there's been a dramatic change. You can see there's a change of attitude from the very top of the agencies. I think they realise that actually that technology has to be embraced and not ignored, and you can't just put your head in the sand. In fact, one of the leading tech people said a very interesting thing to me at one of the agencies, because I think the agencies are starting to look at providing a service of technology advice to their clients rather than just agency and advisory. And he gave me a very good example of one of their youngsters had come up with an idea of how to save costs, energy costs in a building, and they backed it, and the idea was they would then sell it into their clients. So for every square foot where this technology was embraced, instead of getting commission as an investment sale, for example, this agent would get paid a commission on a per square foot basis could end up being the most highly paid person in the company. A complete change of attitude, whereas normally it's the big, the guys in the city selling the £100 million buildings who are the glory, making the glory fees. It could completely change. And I think that is happening and happening fast.
Okay. Right, we'll draw that first session to a close. Sorry about the AV hiccups there. It's always the tech that finds you out when you start talking about tech. It's just one of those things. The gremlins love to come alive for that sort of thing. But yeah, some interesting area covered there. And we'll move on to the showcase. But if you join me in thanking the panelists for the first half.